Every few years, Hollywood tries to kill Godzilla. Nuclear warheads detonated in the water next to it. Entire air forces scrambled and destroyed. 70 years of cinema and humanity has never once come up with a convincing answer. So let's ask the real question instead. What actually exists on this planet? Or existed on it? That could actually threaten something 355 feet tall and 90,000 tons? The answer starts on land. And for every animal that lives there, today is going to be a very bad day. But before we get to the real animals, Hollywood did eventually come up with its own answer. King Kong. A gorilla scaled up to roughly 300 feet in the 2021 film, big enough to stand toe-to-toe with Godzilla, strong enough to actually hurt it, and the basis of one of the most expensive monster fights ever put on screen. Problem solved, right? Except, apply the same physics we are about to use on Godzilla, and Kong has exactly the same problem. A real gorilla at 300 feet would have a skeleton that collapsed under its own weight, a heart that could not pump blood to a brain that far above its body, and lungs that could not expand against the compression of its own chest. Kong cannot exist on land either. Hollywood did not solve the problem of what beats Godzilla. It invented a second impossible thing, put them both in the same city, and called it a sequel. So if the world's most famous solution to Godzilla is another creature that also cannot exist, what actually can? What is real, alive, or once alive on this planet? And could it actually threaten something that size? The answer starts on land, and it starts badly for everything on it. The lion goes first. 500 pounds of muscle, the apex predator of the African savanna, an animal whose entire identity is built on being the thing everything else runs from. It spots Godzilla, decides this is its territory, and leaps at its ankle with full commitment. Godzilla continues walking. The lion is now just hanging there, attached to an ankle the size of a building, being carried through the landscape with no plan and no exit strategy until it lets go, falls into a bush, and sits there while the entire savanna processes what it just witnessed. The grizzly bear simply does not move fast enough. Godzilla's foot comes down, and where the bear was standing there is now a perfectly detailed bear-shaped imprint in the ground. Every feature preserved, like the world's most unfortunate fossil. Local birds discover it within the hour and begin moving in. The saltwater crocodile death rolls on Godzilla's toe with 3,700 pounds per square inch of bite force and 200 million years of unchanged confidence. Godzilla flicks it. The crocodile travels a considerable distance through the air, lands in a field, and has been lying there ever since. Someone has put a traffic cone next to it. The rhinoceros charges at full speed, horn first, and the horn snaps clean off on impact. The rhinoceros staggers backward, looks at the horn on the ground, looks at Godzilla's leg, which shows no evidence that anything occurred, and makes a sound that is much quieter than a roar and much more honest. The elephant puts its forehead against Godzilla's foot and pushes with everything its body can produce. Its feet slide backward through the dirt. Godzilla's foot does not move. After a long time, the elephant stops, steps back, and stands there breathing heavily with the expression of an animal that has just discovered something about the universe it was not expecting. The hippopotamus bites Godzilla's ankle with 1,800 pounds per square inch of genuine territorial fury. Godzilla keeps walking. The hippo is dragged 3 feet through the mud before it releases, walks back to the water, and submerges completely. The official version of events is that nothing happened. Any hippo that suggests otherwise will be bitten. Now we check back in on all of them. The lion has not moved from its bush. Its pride keeps a respectful distance, because nobody knows what to say. One lioness tried to bring it a zebra this morning. A good zebra, she put real effort in. And the lion looked at it and walked away. The zebra, for its part, walked past the lion afterward at a completely normal pace. Did not speed up, did not acknowledge the lion's existence. Just walked past as if the lion were a rock or a tree or something the landscape had always contained. This was worse than anything else that happened today. The hyena has been laughing since it happened and has positioned itself just close enough to the lion to be clearly audible. The wildebeest is standing 4 feet from the lion, making sustained eye contact, and has been doing so for 2 hours without moving. The warthog has developed an impression of the lion hanging from the ankle and has been performing it on request for anyone who asks, adding new details each time. The meerkat climbed the lion's rock while the lion was away, delivered a full roar from the top to an enthusiastic crowd, and when the lion returned, descended at a leisurely pace, made brief eye contact, and walked away without apparent concern. Meanwhile, the rhino and the elephant are standing together in silence at the spot where the horn landed, united in a wordless understanding of what it means to have given everything and found out it was not the right kind of thing. The crocodile is still in the field. A second traffic cone has appeared. The hippo is underwater and unavailable for comment. And then the comedy stops. The Tyrannosaurus rex was 40 feet long and 8 tons with a bite force of 12,800 pounds per square inch, the most powerful bite of any land animal ever recorded. An apex predator so dominant it had no natural enemies for millions of years. Against Godzilla, it is roughly the size of Godzilla's hand. The most powerful land predator that has ever existed on this planet could sit in Godzilla's palm. The Patagotitan, the largest land animal that has ever lived at 120 feet and 70 tons, was already at the absolute ceiling of what the square cube law allows on land, and is still less than 1/10 of 1% of Godzilla's mass. The land produced everything physics would allow it to produce. None of it is close. So we go into the water, because the water plays by different rules. The square cube law that limits everything on land becomes almost irrelevant in the ocean, because water carries weight in a way air never can. A submerged body is effectively weightless in terms of structural load, which is why the blue whale exists at all. At 100 feet long and 200 tons, the blue whale cannot survive on land, not because it breathes water, but because without the ocean carrying it, its own body weight would slowly crush its internal organs. The ocean does not just produce larger animals than land. It produces animals whose size is only possible because of the water surrounding them. And that changes everything about what the ocean is capable of building. The giant squid is 43 feet long, with the largest eyes of any animal ever recorded. Evolved to detect faint bioluminescent light in absolute darkness miles below the surface. For the entire history of human ocean exploration, it was something we knew existed and had never once seen alive. Bodies ashore, pieces in whale stomachs, carcasses in nets, but the animal itself, in the place it actually lived, remained invisible until 2004 when the first photograph was taken. A 43-foot animal was hidden from humanity for centuries. Against Godzilla, it is eliminated on scale. But remember it. The Megalodon is where the ocean gets serious. 50 to 60 feet, teeth the size of a human hand, bite force of 40,000 pounds per square inch, roughly 3 times the T-Rex. It targeted the chest cavity of large whales, collapsing lungs and hearts with a single strike, before the fossil record stops producing its teeth around 3.6 million years ago. The important word is stops, because sharks are cartilaginous and cartilage does not fossilize. The entire Megalodon fossil record is almost exclusively teeth. If one died in deep water in the right conditions, there may be nothing left to find. Not a trace. Not a single tooth. Against Godzilla, the bite lands on something 2,000 times its mass, and the scale defeats it. But the ocean is not finished. Most people have never heard of Leviathan melvilli, a sperm whale relative, 57 feet and up to 50 tons, that evolved not for filter feeding, but for hunting other whales, with teeth reaching 14 inches, the largest functional teeth of any animal ever recorded. Leviathan and Megalodon existed simultaneously in the same ocean competing for the same prey, which tells you something important. The ocean does not produce one dominant predator and stop. It builds parallel systems of lethality alongside each other. Predator X, formerly Plesiosaurus funke, reached 40 to 50 feet with a bite force of 33,000 pounds per square inch, more than double the Megalodon, the most powerful bite of any marine reptile ever measured. It ambushed from below, driving its skull upward through the water column and delivering a strike not designed to wound. Against anything that lived before Godzilla, 33,000 pounds per square inch is not a weapon. It is an execution. The scale problem still eliminates it, but the number deserves a moment. The sperm whale produces clicks of up to 230 decibels, the loudest sound of any animal on the planet, compared to a jet engine at 140. Capable of stunning prey at distance without physical contact. It is the first animal on this list that does not need to close the distance to cause damage. Against Godzilla, it is still not enough, but it has introduced something important. The weapon does not have to be physical. The bootlace worm, Lineus longissimus, is the longest animal ever recorded, up to 180 feet, longer than Godzilla is tall. Living in shallow coastal water producing a neurotoxin science has not fully characterized. In direct combat, it is immediately eliminated, but it is shown that the ocean produces animals longer than Godzilla's height in water, shallow enough to wade through, armed with chemistry we do not fully understand. If the shallow ocean produces this, what has the deep ocean produced over millions of years in conditions we have never observed? Which brings us to the only contender that does not get eliminated. The Mariana Trench reaches 36,000 feet at its deepest point. If you placed Godzilla at the bottom, there would be 35,000 feet of water above its head. Mount Everest lowered into the trench would sit more than a mile underwater. We have sent humans to the moon 6 times and to the bottom of the Mariana Trench exactly 3 times. And the moon, at 238,000 miles away, is easier to reach than a point 0.7 miles below our own ocean. The pressure at the bottom is 1,086 atmospheres. Metal implodes. Submarines collapse. A human body does not suffer at that pressure. It simply stops existing in its previous form instantaneously. Because the differential between internal and external pressure is so vast, the body has no time to register what is happening. Now, apply that to Godzilla. Every gas-filled cavity in a biological organism collapses under sufficient pressure. And at 36,000 feet, the pressure is total. There is no gas, only water pressing inward from every direction simultaneously with a force that has no equivalent anywhere on land or in the shallower ocean. Godzilla's defining characteristic is regeneration, the ability to repair cellular damage faster than it accumulates. But regeneration requires chemical reactions, cellular machinery, and oxygen circulating through tissue in conditions those systems were designed for. At 36,000 feet, in absolute permanent darkness, under pressure that collapses every gas cavity in a body, the question of whether regeneration continues to function is not one anyone can answer. Because nothing that size has ever gone that deep. Because we have visited the bottom 3 times and found creatures we could not classify, translucent and boneless, and moving through conditions that should make biology impossible, and we still do not fully understand how they survive. The ocean does not fight Godzilla, it simply exists. And it gets darker, and it gets colder, and it gets heavier. And at sufficient depth, it becomes a condition that no amount of regeneration has ever been imagined surviving. And somewhere on the savannah, the lion is still sitting on its rock. The hyena is still laughing. The wildebeest is still standing 4 feet away. The warthog is still doing the impression. None of it matters to the lion right now, because the lion is thinking about something none of the other animals have thought to think about yet. It looked at what was standing in front of it and it knew, before the leap was even finished, that this was not a problem with a solution that involved being the strongest thing in the room. The lion is not sitting there because it lost. It is sitting there because it was the first animal today to understand something true about the world. And understanding true things is not always a comfortable experience. The ocean already knew this. It has always known this. It does not charge or bite or hang from an ankle. It just gets deeper and darker and heavier. And at the right depth, it wins not by being stronger, but by being something nothing has ever been built to survive. Godzilla came from the ocean. In every version of the story, that is where it lives, where it is safe, where it returns. But the ocean goes deeper than Godzilla has ever gone. And whatever has spent millions of years adapting to those conditions in the permanent dark at the bottom of the Mariana Trench has not been found yet. Not because it is not there, but because we have not looked. Because in the entire history of human civilization, we have visited the deepest point of our own planet fewer times than we have walked on the moon. The ocean did not create Godzilla as its greatest achievement. It created Godzilla as something it could swallow. The lion sits on its rock and stares at the horizon as the sun goes down. It is not the king of anything it thought it was king of this morning. But then again, neither is Godzilla.